For this week's podcast, what we're doing is we're taking a little deeper look into the standards and the resources that are available for secondary school teachers. So let's walk through this a little bit. There is no handout for you. You just need to kind of follow along with all this. The handout will be the PowerPoint. You can look at it and look at the live links along the way. But one of the things that the Michigan Merit Curriculum happens to talk about pretty quickly is whether or not, what is it that you have to know? Well, this one link here happens to be just a little covered up because I just had it open. But what it does is it opens on up to a page here in which you see how to improve the outcomes for Michigan high school students. This is pretty helpful right here when you're looking at the questions of the most frequently asked questions, and you can look at that and take it right down to the social studies page. But I'm going to link in our PowerPoint those particular. So I drew from the frequently asked questions, and one of those questions is, what social studies courses do students need to take in high school? So if we click on that particular link, it should open up and it's going to take us right to this document that says, oh, that explains it, the Michigan Merit Curriculum. And you got to kind of scroll down, and go, oh, social studies is on page 14. The nice thing is this is all linked in, it's live links. So if you have a major or a minor in another content area, you can go here and look at what the requirements are for graduation as well. We'll click on social studies. The current law says that there has to be at least 3 credits in the social studies. And of those 3 credits, you have to have 1 in U.S. history and geography, 1 in world history and geography, a half credit in economics, and civics course. You also, with some students, can have a modified personal curriculum. Don't you worry about that. That's not your job to do. But you may, as a teacher, get asked to help modify a student's curriculum. And oftentimes that is a result of special situations in the student's life where they cannot take certain courses, or it could be that there's special education and we're going to make some modifications. So we've already seen what the number of credits happen to be in this thing for teaching the social studies. And then the next question that pops up in here, which leads us to a website, is, what are the standards or guidelines that can be found? And so this is a good one too for you to know, because if we click here on this one where it talks about the standards for K-12 schools, this will take you all the way down through these Common Core standards, what's out there, what do I really need to know? So these are kind of like, they call it the resources at your fingertips. Now the website isn't too intuitive, but if you were to click up here under resources, this is the page that would open up for you, and you could see a lot of different things. And you will hear stuff about smarter balanced assessment, but for right now, you do not need to know what any of that means. I just wanted to make you aware that this website is out there and that it exists for you as a teacher. Now, this is a page that really is the kind of like the gold in all of this. We've been taking a look at the proposed standards. You are aware of the grade level content expectations that are the current practicing standards for kindergarten through 8th grade. And if you were to go and complete your site-based this semester in a 6th, 7th, 8th grade classroom, when you go to write your lesson plans, you would identify the standard or the GLICs that relate to your lesson plan, and it would come through that document, but that you can upload, download, print off from that particular website. If you're going to be creating your unit plan in our class, that is a 6th, 7th, 8th grade unit plan or a topic within those grade levels, then you will be using this document to identify what the content expectations are, the benchmark standards. If you're doing high school, you're going to be doing your site-based lessons in a high school, or your unit plan is going to be a high school-based set of lessons, then of course you're going to be using the current set of standards that are practiced, which are called the Huskies High School Content Expectations, and you get those right from here. But wait, the MDE has more on their website than just standards, standards, standards. The standards guide and protect a body of knowledge that we believe should be taught in the different subject areas or core content areas, we might say, content areas, kindergarten through 12. As a curriculum guy, I understand this big. We want what's called a scope and sequence. We want certain foundational principles to be introduced at K1, built upon in 2, expanded upon in 3, and then we start looking at history and economics and geography and political science as we expand through the study of Michigan history, in the United States history, Eastern Hemisphere, Western Hemisphere, then into American history, world history, political science, and civics. So it's this building of a process that we have. And the MDE has done all the work to make sure that the national standards from history, national standards from economics, national standards from geometry, where'd that come from? That's math. You know what I'm losing it. Geography. There we go. And then the national standards, I missed one there, economics. That they all align with what is being taught in Michigan. You don't have to worry about that. In fact, you don't have to worry about it at all because the school districts have invested in the construction of what are called curriculum maps, curriculum guides, pacing guides, in which you as a teacher 6th, 7th, 8th grade, 9th, 11th, 12th in a social studies class, math class, English class, foreign language class, whatever it is you're teaching, there should be a pacing guide that says, here's what you're going to teach. In fact, the MDE actually is going to give some examples of how things should be taught month by month by month. So let's take a look at this grade-specific resource because I think you're going to find there's some really neat stuff there that you can tap into as you're creating lesson plans and as you're creating your unit plan. Well, this is the resource that I wanted to show you. I scrolled down to grade 6. So if you wanted to see what a grade 6 unit plan example would look like, you could go right there. World history, geography, resource recommendations. These things I call capstone projects, and you know what a capstone project is, something that is created so it shows this final level of learning by the students. 7th grade outline happens to be here, 8th grade outline is here. I introduced in class this idea of enduring understanding and big ideas. And so what we see under high school resources happens to be, a big idea activity or a U.S. history essential question activity. And I want you to open those up, but I do want you to know something. When we open them up, their essential question ideas are really going to look like objectives, learning objectives, because they're very narrow focused specific questions. And that's really not the idea behind an essential question, and you're going to find this kind of conflict going on right now between big idea, essential question. Some people want it very, very broad and moving across time and history. Other people say, well, it ought to be this little piece here. And it's going, okay, just walk with whatever your district goes along with. I'm just going to be introducing you to these particular concepts. Well, from the website I just showed you, I went ahead and opened up the Civics and Government Big Idea Activity resource. And over on the left side, you see here happens to be your different standards that you would be teaching. And on the right side is an idea. The United States increased power as world leader as a result of the Spanish-American War. The consequence of adopting a Cold War containment policy were unknown and in the future. So what this particular worksheet does is it gets people to think about, okay, how could I make this a big idea? So let's take this first one. The United States increases power as a world leader as a result of the Spanish-American War. So if you recall, the Spanish-American War is going to be fought on two fronts. Cuba is going to be a place that Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders are happen to have a place in history of after the United States battleship USS Maine is blown up in the harbor of Havana. Yellow journalism takes place, and everybody believes that, this was done by these bad Spanish people wanting to destroy the United States. Over on the other side of the world, we have the Philippines. And so we start fighting this war to take away Spanish territory and make it something of the U.S. territory. As a result of this, the United States took on an established European world power. We took on England, Great Britain to begin with a colonial war, and now we're going to take on Spain and then win both of them. And as a result, then their power increases. So for me, a big idea here would be the establishment of military might and victories expands a nation's power and influence in the world. And when you think of it like that, their military might and victories expand their power and influence, you can say, is that true of Japan? It sure is. They beat the Russians up pretty well, pretty much took over a good chunk of the Korean Peninsula, all the Korean Peninsula, and parts of China. Okay, is that true of China's growth and dominance? Yep, same thing there. What about the Russian growth? Yep, same thing there. So that's what we're looking for, is these themes that can be attached to other historical events when I talk about big ideas. That's how I like to sell the concept of big idea. Now there's another link on there about the social studies resources, and you'll see this again. We've already looked at, there were these unit plans out there. So there's a 6th, a 7th, and an 8th grade unit plan outline. There's actually a unit plan worksheet that's not a bad thing to look at. Not necessarily what I want you to follow. I'm very specific in how I want you to complete your unit plan for our class. But this I think you should be really knowledgeable about too. If you were to click on this link here, it would take you through skill development. Social studies is one of those essential topics where we are teaching skills, 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 and skills. And one of the most important skills that you can teach students is how to read a chart and a graph. I can't tell you, we have, I don't know, at least 20, 30 years of standardized test data that says that students cannot accurately read and interpret charts. So if you can help them to read the data and interpret it and analyze what's in a chart or what's in a graph, that is a very important skill, and we use that in the social studies as well. Not to mention, we use a lot of map skills, we use a lot of vocabulary, we introduce them to very important people from history. I mean, there's a lot of things that goes into our teaching of the social studies. We teach them to read, we teach them also we teach them how to interpret what they're reading, we teach them how to write, and we'll get into that in a little bit. We teach them how to speak as well, whether it be in a discussion or a debate, or perhaps it is in a presentation that they're making to the class themselves. So we have a ton of things that we do with the students in the social studies. That's why I like teaching it. It's just like we can bring so many things in at one time. When you get into the MDE website here and you see this alignment resources, you can ignore it. Just know that some really kind of crazy person that gets excited about looking at all these standards and then looking at all of the national history standards, national geography standards, economic standards, civic standards, took the time to go, oh yeah, these standards fit with this benchmark, with that benchmark, with that benchmark, with that benchmark. That's the kind of crazy person like I am, because I have a PhD in that area. I like curriculum development. And so what I hope you've seen is what we're doing in the Michigan curriculum is at the lowest levels of kindergarten, first grade, we're introducing these base concepts of community, and we're building on that a little bit into second grade. And then by third grade on up, we start to build skills and geographic literacy with them. We're talking now about history of the nation of Michigan, and we keep broadening it to the world. And then by the time we get into 8th grade, we're focused back on U.S. history and then moving forward to world history, civics, and economics again. When you are in a school, and one of the assignments is see if you can get a pacing guide, a curriculum map, a curriculum guide from the teacher of the classroom that you're observing in. And that guide is cool because somebody has taken all the time to say, okay, we're going to start here on day 1, we're going to end here on day 175, so to speak. And here's what you have to teach, and these are the recommended chunks of time that you should be teaching your subject through the year. Oftentimes these things are full of resources as well. School districts put a lot of work into this to help your teaching go very, very smoothly. Now, I just wanted to show you there were some additional resources that are here as well. We've already taken a look at the core democratic values. Then how do you connect Michigan history to United States history? I mean, I love Michigan history. We have some absolutely cool history in Michigan. And I travel around and, take pictures of things. I was climbed to the top of a lighthouse that was built in 1871 this past summer. That was really cool. And the man who guided me to the top of that lighthouse, his father was the last lighthouse keeper of that particular lighthouse. That was really neat to hear the history of him as a kid visiting South Manitou Island and going up the lighthouse. His father retired as a lighthouse keeper in Michigan. He had 4 different lighthouses that he manned over time. We use case studies, how to do your annotated timelines. Vocabulary is really, really big. I wouldn't get bogged down with these 2 links here. I think you should just refer to the vocabulary that's in your textbook and then scale it back. We can have way too much vocabulary when we're creating lessons. I once had a gentleman in my department that believed that if you knew vocabulary, you knew the information. So all he did was he tested students on vocabulary. His test would have 50 to 60 vocabulary words, 70 vocabulary words. He wasn't teaching them deep concepts of constructing knowledge or interpreting or analyzing. His was all, you need to know this fact, this fact, this fact, this fact, and this fact is related to this vocabulary term, this fact's related to that vocabulary term. It was like, wow, that's not what the social studies is all about. And then some ACT characteristics are in there, adolescent literacy is there too. So I think you're going to find all of this to be rather helpful for you. I'm just introducing this to you to let you know what? This stuff's out here for your teacher. When you become a teacher, you need to relate to these things. For the purposes in our class, you've got to develop a unit plan. Why not take a look at the unit plans that are developed at the middle school level, even if you plan on developing a unit plan at the high school level? At least it gives you an idea. Well, one of the things we did talk about in class also was that there is not a Common Core standard for social studies, but there are Common Core standards in the English language arts for social studies. And so let's click on this link and we're going to take a look at those standards. I think you'll be relieved to know that it's not going to be something really huge for you to have to incorporate, but I do expect you to incorporate these standards, or at least identify where you're incorporating these standards in your unit plan lessons. Well, I've opened up the link that was there in the PowerPoint to the Common State Standards, English Language Arts, and Literacy and History, Social Studies, Science, Technical Subjects. We're going to find what we want in the social studies over here on page 60. Let me type that in, and here we go. We should be able to find it right here, Literacy Standards, History, Social Studies, Technical Subjects. And so if I were to blow this up a little bit, so you can see these are the 612 standards. Key ideas so that students are going to read closely and determine what the text says explicitly, make logical inferences. They're going to be able to interpret what words and phrases are, assess a point of view. This is good stuff that we do in the social studies. So as you read through these, you're going to be able to say, yeah, I could do that with this activity in a unit plan, this activity as well. Integrating and evaluating content presentation, analyzing 2 or more texts addressing similar themes. I'm going to introduce to you how to teach students to analyze information and then write to it using a DBQ. When you have them active in participating in a DBQ activity, they're doing all of this stuff right here. So that's a quick way to make sure that you are meeting these English language arts standards. Now, if you really want to get a little deeper with this, which you do not, I do want you to see that as a future teacher, there's somewhat of an expectation for how students are going to use their reading and literacy approach. And so they've broken this down into a couple of topics: key ideas, craft and structure, integration, knowledge, range of reading level, and text complexity. And they have it broken down. This would be the target area for 6 to 8, 9 to 10, and 11 to 12. And as we would expect, they are progressively getting more difficult and demanding on the student as we move toward the 11th and 12th grade and part of the college readiness focus of the Michigan Merit Curriculum. Now, if we just scroll down just a little bit, then you're going to see the college and career readiness anchor standards for writing. Again, I'm not expecting you to get into this stuff and really kind of go, oh yeah, I gotta do this, gotta do that. Boy, I'll tell you, you're going to soon find out that in teaching, like I have said, there's never enough time to do everything the way you would like it to do, it. There just isn't enough time for teachers. But the next page is most important, because just like there were reading standards, here are the writing standards for grades 6 to 8, 9 to 10, 11, and 12. So as you develop your unit plan, and you have to incorporate these English Language Arts Common Core standards in here, then if you are going to be saying, I'm going to do a writing project at grade 10, and you tell me it fits these English Language Arts standards, I can just look right here and go, really, does it? 9-10, write arguments, focus on discipline-specific content, which is what all of these are asking for, not narrative, not informational, argumentative. This is to prepare students was preparing them for the ACT, now it's going to be the SAT. So you need to read through each of these, and when we take a look at a DBQ, we'll be able to match a DBQ, the goals of that DBQ, right up to these things here. So again, they start off a little on the simplistic end, and then they move forward with a little more intensity as you get to the college preparedness grades of 11, 12. As I introduced to you this whole idea of big idea or enduring understanding and essential questions, they are there to help, just make things a little more logical for students, and for them to see that history is not just this small little segment, but rather there's causes and effects in history. There are themes in history that appear over and over again. And so what we wanted to do is to help students to stage some learning, and the most powerful thing we can ever do as a teacher is to, before we even start to teach something, is to tap into the prior knowledge of the student. I mean, they got something back here in their brain somewhere because they've gone through this tiered system starting in kindergarten with the social studies, and we got to go back and pull it forward to them, because that's how we learn. We all learn by making associations, similarities, and differences. We attach new things onto previous knowledge that we are holding on to. And so this whole idea of using big idea essential questions helps them to keep a focus for what they're learning. And to be honest, social studies teachers are not real good with this. I mean, you ask a kid what they're supposed to be learning in social studies, and they're going, we're doing something on a war, right? Those days are over. You need to put on the board every day what it is the students are learning. That's why we want to use the big idea, enduring understanding, those essential questions, and We want them to visually see the learning objectives so that we're being very, very deliberate in linking the desired levels of learning to what the activities that are going on in the classroom. Believe it, kids don't make the connection. You do because you know the subject area. You spend time prepping for it. They just walk in the classroom expecting to pull their skull cap off and you to pour something in and put it back on so that 55 minutes later they can be out the door in another class and pull their skull cap off and have somebody pour it in. And somehow it's supposed to all make sense. And it gets jumbled. So we want to be very, 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 very deliberate and not do any assuming whatsoever that the students know what we're up to. So when we look at this, and I want you to go to this website here, you're going to look at all of those great big idea essential questions that they have kind of put together. But there's another place I want you to go in Blackboard to become more familiar with the concept of big ideas and essential questions. Under Materials and Resources, if you scroll down, you'll find this UBD, Understanding by Design, Big Ideas, Essential Questions. And there's a little bit of a sheet here that we might work with. But here's what's really neat here is I've got in that particular, let's see if I can expand my page here a little bit. There we go. There are some videos about understanding the terms of enduring understanding, big ideas, and essential questions. And I would like you to take time to click on those links, especially these two right here, the big ideas, essential questions. Those are really, really good for you to get a handle on what we are meaning about this concept of big ideas and essential questions. I mean, it's obvious you're going to have a quiz on all this, right? So it's like, what's he going to quiz us over? Well, I'm going to need you to be able to really tell me if something is a big idea or is it an essential question. Okay? It's kind of simple along that line. I may have you construct something yourself so that I know that you know how to do this. This particular quiz leads you down to some resources, and I'm going to ask you questions about, so where would you go to find this? Okay, so you've got to spend some time clicking on these links for this week. And then the last thing, whoops, the last thing that we're looking at, I think I blew that. I didn't stop my video, did I? So sorry about that, is we looked at our lesson plan. So make sure that you understand that you know what are those components in a good lesson plan. I mean, yes, we want to know what the title is of the lesson. That's great. We do need to know what the topic is. That's very important. We definitely need to know what the grade level is because we want to match up. Does that grade level match with the benchmark standards that you're next going to identify? Are there any specific materials of instruction that you're going to need? All right, now what are my learning objectives? And in order to really pay attention to those learning objectives, I want you to look at Blackboard. And here in Blackboard, under this lesson development handout, we have the Spring Arbor University lesson plan template. I mean, if you don't know what an anticipatory set is, that's how you catch your students. Okay, you just got to grab them with some understanding. And it can be as simple as, all right, class, yesterday we started a discussion about bum, 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 bum. On your desk right now is a half sheet of paper. On the projector or on the screen, I've projected some true-false statements. Please take a moment and tell me, are these statements true or false based upon what we did yesterday? Turn to your neighbor when you're done and check each other's lessons. I'll share with you one of my favorite anticipatory sets ever in a social studies class. I had those kids in the palm of my hand. Took me about 20 minutes to set the whole thing up, but they took it hook, line, and sinker. I had them so emotionally engaged that when I all of a sudden turned the lesson on them, they went, oh, but they made the connection because they were emotionally engaged. So look at our, an anticipatory set. Doesn't have to be real creative. It just needs to set the stage of introducing the lesson. And then how do you plan your steps in a lesson? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. They need to be sequential and orderly. And in a social studies lesson, they can't be all lecture. You'll notice what I do in class is talk a little bit, small group activity. Talk, small group activity. Maybe I talk a little bit too much sometimes, but always going back to some other activity. That's how we want you to teach the social studies as well. The biggest problem that I still have at this level is students don't know how to write learning objectives. And so we use these two handouts on Bloom's taxonomy to write learning objectives. And if you remember Bloom's taxonomy, it's like a house with 6 levels on it. And at the bottom here is the very base level of knowledge, the who, what, where, why, when. And you'll find that way too many teachers ask questions down here at the secondary level, and their learning objectives are built down here. So what we want to use is a variety of adjectives when we're building a unit plan so that your lessons are asking for just base knowledge, but they're also asking for application. They're asking for evaluation, analysis, synthesis. And so I'm looking for you to create lesson plans that are using a variety of adjectives that can be tracked right over to Bloom's taxonomy and tell me which taxon level are you aiming for. Now at the elementary level, that knowledge base set of objectives with the adjectives that are, who did this, why this, describe, identify, that's fine. That's fine. We get up a little more. We really need students doing things like comparing and evaluating, creating, analyzing. So I want you to really pay attention. That Bloom's taxonomy sheet is going to be on the quiz. I assure you of it. All right, that's it for this week. I've talked long enough. I made a few mistakes on this podcast. I apologize. Thanks so much. You're a great group of future teachers. It's my honor to spend time in shaping you to become a future social studies teacher. Have a great week.